So hello again. I'm going to tell you a story. This is Ambapali's story. It's set a long time ago, about 2,500 years ago. And we're in the city of Vaishali, which is the capital city of the Maitridevi clan. And it's in modern-day Bihar in India. And we're in the royal gardens. And there's a gardener working there. And he walks past a lovely mango tree one day. And at the bottom of the mango tree is a tiny baby that's been abandoned. And he takes this baby home, a little girl, and the gardener and his wife bring her up. And they call her Ambapali. Amba is the mango tree, and Pali is a protector or a guardian. So this little girl grows into the most exquisitely beautiful woman. She is the most beautiful woman in the city of Vaishali, which is a bit of a mixed blessing because she has many suitors who want to marry her, who are competing with one another. And it ends up getting very difficult. The situation gets so difficult that in the end the city, the elders of the city, make a decision that rather than her marrying someone, she will marry no one, but become the courtesan of Vaishali. So this is Ambapali's lot. Now a courtesan, we don't really have such things. Often people think prostitute. This isn't really what a courtesan was. She would have been as well as being very beautiful, she would have been very accomplished in poetry and song and music and conversation. She became a very wealthy woman with her own property. She was independent. She had, within the confines of being a courtesan, she had quite a lot of freedom, and she was actually well respected in the city, not least because she brought Vaishali a lot of prosperity. So the prosperity would come from merchants coming to cities to trade, and the merchants would be thinking, where shall I go to trade? Oh, I'll go to Vaishali because if I'm there I can see Ambapali as well. So a huge amount of prosperity and money trade poured into Vaishali because everybody wanted to see Ambapali. But somewhere, although she was extremely successful and much loved and this extraordinary beauty, obviously somewhere in her there was a sense of dis-ease with her life. At least enough to take her to go to a grove on the outskirts of a city one day where she had heard that the Buddha was preaching. And she heard him talk about the Dharma, and she was so moved that she went to him afterwards and said, please, would you come to my house for your meal? And the Buddha agreed. And she was so excited, she rushed home in her chariot and had a bit of a road accident halfway with some people coming the other direction, some very wealthy, prestigious Maitridevi youths who were very annoyed to be in an accident until they saw it was Ambapali, this very beautiful woman. But then she told them, I was in such a hurry because the Buddha was coming to my house to eat. And they were mortified because that was what they were going to do. They were going to go to see the Buddha and invite him to their house to eat. They offered her lots of gold if she would give up her invite and let them host the Buddha instead. And she just refused. She said, no way. They were quite put out, but she had the Buddha come to her house. And whatever he said, we don't know what he said to her, but she was moved enough to give all of her wealth and property to the Sangha, to the Buddhist Sangha. And she had several mango groves, and she gave those to the Sangha. And some of the Buddha's teachings are set in these mango groves, in Ambapali's mango groves. And later she renounced the householder life completely and went forth as a homeless wanderer, practicing the Buddha's teachings, and she becomes enlightened in her old age. And what we have of her in the Therigatha is her poem, which she is said to have sung when she was awakened. So it's 20 verses long. I'm not going to read you 20 verses. I'm going to read you just 4 for the moment. And I'm reading them from Hallisey's book, Hallisey's translation. The hairs on my head were once curly, black, like the colour of bees. Now, because of old age, they are like jute. It's just as the Buddha, the speaker of truth, said, nothing different than that. My eyes were black and innocent, like jewels that are brilliant and beautiful. Now struck by old age, they do not shine. It's just as the Buddha, the speaker of truth, said, nothing different than that. Once my teeth were beautiful, they looked like plantain buds. Now because of old age, they are broken and yellow. It's just as the Buddha, the speaker of truth, said, nothing different than that. Once my hands were both beautiful, decorated with smooth rings made of gold. Now because of old age, they are like tree roots and vegetables. It's just as the Buddha, the speaker of truth, said, nothing different than that. So there we have a little bit of her poem, which is both beautiful and, I think, fascinating on a number of levels. She has these the details of her poem, her hair being black, the colour of black bees, with all this the sort of beauty and the movement associated with bees, and now like jute, and a sense of her fingers being like root vegetables or tree roots, like radishes or wrinkly carrots. So there's quite a lot of detail in there. And it's both detail describing beauty and also quite unsparing assessment of her decaying body. So in other points, she mentions on the subject of hair, she says it used to be perfumed like flowers. Now, because of old age, it smells like rabbit fur. And she also says, because of old age, it is sparse in many spots. She's got bald patches. It's quite unusual to hear someone, and perhaps especially a woman, talking like that about themselves, how they look, or how terribly they look in their old age. But the other thing that's happening in this poem or song is that you've got two frameworks of perception playing off of each other. So the first is that would have been instantly recognisable in to the people of her day, is that there's an evocation of the Indian love song, yeah, which is a traditional, a sort of delighting in the beauty of the beloved, and it begins with her head and goes down to her toes, yeah. So hair once curly, black like the colour of bees. The hair on my head was once scented like a perfumed box filled with flowers. And all the way down to her feet. Let's find her feet. Once my feet were beautiful, so soft they seemed filled with cotton. So this working from head to toe, delighting in beauty, was a very familiar format for the Indian love poem. A celebration of youth, of beauty, and immediately recognisable. And at the same time, what we also see through there, as she works her way from head to feet, is she's very sort of frank assessment of what she looks like now, which has echoes of, for me, two very traditional Buddhist practices. One was the reflection on the decomposition of the corpse. So she's not reflecting on the decomposition of the corpse, but she's reflecting on the aging of her body in a systematic way. And then the other reflection would have been to do with the foulness of the body, which wasn't a reflection on what the body looked like so much as assuming that someone's already attached to the beauty of the body is beautiful, and a reflection of the inner workings of the body, which are a little bit more disgusting, the bile and the pus and the excrement and things like that. So it's kind of got the flavour of both of those practices. And I think what's interesting is that she uses these two things, this sort of the Indian love song and the Buddhist practices, and she works them off each other. And the poem can't be reduced to either. And that she does that is both... it has a sort of element of surprise for the reader, and it may be also slightly shocking as well. And all of that is held within the framework of an early Indian poetic meter. So poetry was, really in its early days back then. So, but already she's using a particular rhythmic form that would have been was being developed in India. So because she's an accomplished poet. So she's working with these two forms within the poetic structure, and she threads everything together with this refrain, which is a refrain about the truth and about the Buddha speaking the truth. So the refrain is, "It's just as the Buddha, the speaker of truth, said, nothing different than that." And when she talks about her body as it is at the point of her singing, in other words, in her old age, there's no sense of shame or grief or sorrow or revulsion that comes across, to me anyway, even though she's speaking extremely personally about herself. And there's even a sort of, some people it almost sounds quite comic, so there's maybe a sense of lightness as well. But the point is, she just seems quite free within this process. She's free within the poetic structure. She's free within these different perspectives of the love song and Buddhist practice. And it's as if she's playing with all of them. And she's neither captured by beauty, her form of beauty, or disgusted by her aging body. And at the end, there is a sort of, she's even got some puns in there. So apparently, I don't think this necessarily works. I think you probably have to be Nepali and be translating from it. But where are we? Yeah, so the last verse says, "This body was once like that, now feeble with age and fallen from its pride. It is the home of many sufferings, like an old house, the plaster falling down. And apparently there's a play on the word for plaster is also similar to the word for pride, or is the same word even. So she's doing a word play on pride and plaster. Doesn't work in this language, but anyway, she's obviously enjoying playing with words in this. So there's a lightness to it. A while ago, I was listening to a Nick Cave lecture on the secret life of the love song. So Nick Cave's an Australian musician. He was saying, to his mind, what makes a good love song is that a love song is never strictly happy. He says we must first embrace pain. And to his mind, otherwise, the love song, the sort of love song that is just only happy, is in some way superficial and inauthentic. Yeah, it's a little bit plasticky. And he quotes Lorca, who talks about duende. He wrote an essay on duende and saying that all dark sound has duende. And duendes is more like, this is a Spanish word that's associated with flamenco. It has this feeling of, it's like the soul of Spain in some ways, but it's got a sort of a darkness to it. So it's got an authenticity that acknowledges both sorrow and death as alongside love and joy. So we have this sort of sense of, when both of those things are acknowledged, there's a sense of realness to what's being said. And I think this is what Ambapali's doing. She's holding these two things together and she's refusing to give way to either one or the other. And she's saying, and she's bringing them together with truth. So she's saying, both of these are there, and it's true that beauty is lost and old age happens, but beauty does happen. She's not denying that. And so I think that gives it a richness to her poetry. So I suppose the question is, what is Ambapali saying to us? I have a question, why is she untroubled by aging when she smells like a rabbit and she's got bald patches? And what can we learn from her? So the most immediate thing she's talking to us is about beauty and age, if we just take it quite literally. And it's interesting, I find it interesting, 2,500 years later, our society is still, almost chronically youth-oriented. And aging is, especially for women, is denied. You dye your hair, get a facelift, you put on more makeup. And there's a very strong sort of conditioning for women to value themselves based on their appearance. It's not that different. So she's saying to us, you can't rest on beauty. This is the dis-ease in her that meant that she was receptive to what the Buddha was saying, and presumably she had everybody her whole life saying, wow, you are amazingly beautiful. And she probably went to hear the Buddha, and he talked to her about age and impermanence. And he didn't say, you're amazingly beautiful. He said, everything will change. In a way we lose everything. And there must have been something that was immense relief to her to hear that, because in a way she knew that anyway. I think there's an immense sense of dis-ease that's in us when we know at some level that we're relying on things that we can't rely on. Yeah. So, and she is an extreme case in a way. Her entire life was constructed around her beauty. And in a way, if she can move away from that, then we can too, to the degree that we are also constructed, our sense of ourselves is based around our appearance. And she's saying you can rest on the truth of impermanence. You can't rest on your looks. But I think there's something, if we go a little bit further, that we can understand from what she's saying, which is around what I'm thinking of as identity, what we identify with. So Ambapali is saying, for my whole life, I have been identified as a beautiful woman. Now, we may not be identified in that way, but we all have a sense of identity, and we will be identified with something or some things. Yeah, may not be looks. And the reason why we have a sense of identity is because it helps us to fix ourselves. It gives us a bit of relief. Say, well, I'm like this and I'm not like that. Because it's disturbing to us, it's actually quite disturbing to have a sense of openness where you're not fixing yourself, yeah? To have a sense of, in a way, not knowing. It's quite scary to sit with not defining yourself. So we go to fix ourselves through creating a sense of our identity, who we are, what sort of person we are. And when you fix yourself, you fix the world. Yeah, it's the same mind. I can't fix who I am without fixing what's out there, and I can't fix what's out there without fixing my sense of myself. So everything gets fixed. It gets fixed in time and space. We use these two dimensions of time and space, and we fix things. We make them permanent, enduring, and we make them essentialized. So we say there's some sort of enduring essence, which is the identity. Yeah, that's the unchanging bit. And our identity might be around looks, could be around health, being healthy, being competent, being successful, being intelligent, being popular, any of those things, or think of your own. We can also create our own identity. We might feel, I'm going to go forth from this sort of identity of being successful in the world and wealthy. You take on take up your Buddhist practice, and then you create your identity about being a Buddhist. Yeah, I'm a good meditator, I'm a good Buddhist, I'm a good mitra or order member or preceptor. Yeah. And there is no problem with any of those things, whether it's being a good meditator or being successful in the world and having lots of money. There's no problem with that. The problem is that we identify with that. In other words, we fix ourselves, which is to say we limit ourselves, and we deny that there's something more than that. So we both cramp what it is that we can be, but also that thing won't last anyway. So we set up a sort of ongoing sense of dis-ease in ourselves, because whatever that identity is, we're going to lose it. We're going to lose it. And either we'll lose it just through time, because aging and death appear on the horizons, or other changes come in. Take, for example, this global pandemic we've got. Who last year thought that we'd be socially isolating? Suddenly, a whole load of things that we might have rested our identity on, like, well, I've got a job. I know I can pay my mortgage, those sorts of things. Or I think I'm going to live, for quite a while. Suddenly everything gets thrown up in the air. Yeah. So, that's always possible. It's happening to us now. It's really interesting that it's happening to a lot of people now. And it's very, people find it very, very stressful. It can be very upsetting and stressful. And a lot of this is just around everything we thought we were relying on has just suddenly shaken loose, and we're on very unfirm ground. So either we have these senses of identity and being fixed, which can just fall apart very easily and leave us as both stressed or anxious, or we do what is the essence of Buddhist practice, is that we're trying to turn to face the truth of the situation. which is that we're not fixed and we can't hold on to anything, which is that actually suffering is inevitable in the human situation. This is what it is to be alive. There's always an element of suffering you can't avoid, but you can avoid creating more for yourself. Everything changes. It's not that everything changes, but everything is change the whole time. And what we hold on to by ignoring the change is fake. It's not how things are. And everything is open. It's not fixable. It's not graspable. I like the word boundless, seems to appeal to me at the moment. Deeply interconnected. Everything conditioning everything else. It's all ungraspable. So we need to have a sort of sense of this open dimension, which is also it doesn't actually give us firm ground to stand on. And it invites, to do that invites a sense of a kind of emotional intensity or disturbance that's quite difficult to hold. And we've been trying to ignore it or avoid it probably most of our lives. So our practice is about relaxing, letting go, and turning towards how things are. Allowing the possibility for different perspectives, being able to play with different perspectives about yourself. If you have a negative self-view, and a negative self-view is one that's basically very cramped and fixed and painful, you need to work out how to find a way of opening that up into a positive self-view. Yeah? And if you have a positive self-view, you need to find a way of opening that up into a multiplicity of views of yourself. Yeah? So no one thing is insisted upon. In the end, you don't have any particular view or sense of identity that is fixed about yourself. And all of this requires a lot of kindness and a lot of awareness. And these are our two basic practices of love and practice of awareness, of noticing, of care. And if we can do that, if we can engage with these practices and allow ourselves to start to loosen our grip on what it is we identify with and the way we limit ourselves, then it will allow us to also sing of how our life was. It might even be how our life was last year and how our life is now. And to appreciate both. And to thread them together with a refrain about the truth, about the way things are. And to have a sense that whatever is to come can also be met with kindness and awareness, and doesn't need to be fought or resisted. That love and awareness will allow us to meet anything. They'll give us the resources to meet that. And I think this is where Ambapali stands for us. Yeah, she stands in this groundless place. Yeah, and she sings to us down, not just down the centuries, but down the millennia. She sings about the same truths. They're true for her. They're true for us, and she expresses to us the delight of a woman standing confidently in the wide open space of reality.
Shakya chiamere.